everyone. I don't know if anybody's actually here yet, so it's probably going to be a few minutes before I start the actual topic of the evening, which tonight we're talking about visibility. So getting eyes on your book, keeping eyes on your book. It's a really interesting topic and I'm really excited to get into it. I've been preparing material for it throughout the week. I've come up with a lot of really cool things. When I went over the material this morning to start preparing for the talk, I was kind of estimating at around 3 hours worth of information. Granted, I am pretty talkative, but that was a lot. So I might have to cut back on some of my tips for this evening and just cover top 3 tips instead of top 5 tips. But whatever I don't cover this evening, we'll put into another talk. I also want to leave room at the end if anybody out there has some questions. I'm sure a lot of you are going to have a lot of questions on this topic, so yeah, I want to leave some opportunity for that. So I'm seeing a bunch of people starting to arrive. I want to go ahead and give people a little bit more time before I dive into the topic this evening. So in the meanwhile, I'm just going to kind of update you on what I've been working on. It is the end of a very long week over here. Just today I wrote the last climactic chapter of Prince of the Doom City, Book 3, which has been my ongoing project these last few months. And I think I'm going to coin a new term. I think I'm going to call these agony books. Because this is definitely an agony book to write. This is in honor of like Charlton Heston's famous movie, The Agony and the Ecstasy, where he portrayed Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. And of course, the agony and the ecstasy refers to like the dual nature of art and creativity. I am not going to coin the term ecstasy books because I'm not going to, but agony books, yes, I think those need to be a thing. This has definitely been an agony book for me. It has been both, just in a lot of ways. Like it's been a challenge to write for like personal reasons because of the things I'm like pulling up from myself in order to write it. It's been a challenge to write just because of external reasons, like physical things and just sleep things and whatever. It's just been not fun, which was sad because of the entire Prince of the Doom City series. Like this was the one I was most looking forward to writing, so I thought this was like an easy book and I was really excited about it. But it's not. It's an agony book. You heard it here first, people. It's a new term. But it's okay. I'm actually, like I said, I just finished the climactic chapter this evening. I have 2 short resolution chapters to go. Agony books are always really worthwhile in the rear view mirror. And I'm very close to this being in my rear view mirror. So very soon I'm going to think this thing is worthwhile. I'm not there yet, but it's coming soon. So anyway, that's what I've been up to. And I will say this week has been a little bit better. I got back into some of the good routines that I had kind of been letting slide a little bit. Getting up early, exercising, spending time in prayer and meditation, like all these things that are just good nourishment for like mind, body, and soul that put you in a better creative space once you sit down to work, and that are honestly just, they're too easy to just let slide because you don't prioritize yourself and you don't prioritize those needs. And it's not good, people. I mean, it will dry you up really fast. So, especially when you're in an agony book, you need to be sure you're nurturing yourself along the way. So I'm back on track this week. I've had a much more successful week. I actually even liked some of the scenes I wrote this week, so that was nice. Anyway, I'm seeing more and more people arriving. Hi, Megan. I see you there. I think you're the Megan who asked me this question initially, aren't you? So it's nice to see you're here. So I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our topic for this evening. The context for our talk was I believe, yep, Megan. She wrote and asked me about visibility, about how to get more eyes on your work once you've got it published. So this is a great topic either if you have a couple of books to your name and you're just not getting the traction you want, or if you are building up to a launch. Even if you've been around the block a couple of times, like it's always good to hear this stuff again. So, and I just want to clarify a couple of things before I get started. First, I'm going to be talking pretty much exclusively about Amazon Kindle and KU ebooks because that's my area of expertise. I have never published wide, so I don't have any expertise about that. My print books are just such a very small part of my business, and hardbacks too, and even audiobooks. Like I'm starting to get a little bit more into all of those, but they're such a small part of my business model at this point that I can't honestly claim selling those as an expertise. My expertise is in Amazon, Kindle, and KU books. KU books, of course, being books that are in the Kindle Unlimited subscription program. So that's what I'm talking about. So first of all, I want to define what I mean when I'm talking about visibility. Because obviously, like, the broad definition of visibility is basically just eyes on your book. Like, you want eyes on your book. And that is obviously important. But I'm going to define it just a little bit further than that. Because, obviously the first importance is just eyes on your book. People cannot buy your book if they don't know it exists. But here's the thing. It goes a step further than that. It's not just that first glance eyes on your book. It's a lingering eyes on your book, a lingering glance. That's what I'm really going to be talking about tonight. Because it's one thing if people like see you're there and they just kind of glaze past you and you end up the wallflower at the ball. We don't want that. We want to have our book be, Lizzie Bennet at the ball, and Mr. Darcy comes walking in and he like glances past, but then he sees you and he does that double take. What's more, we want to go a step beyond that because we want to get that first dance at this ball too. Like, we want to make the sale. We don't want him going, not handsome enough to tempt me. No. We're going to do a step better than Lizzie Bennet. So that's what I'm going to be talking about with visibility this evening. We're going to be talking about how to get that second glance, how to get that first dance. We're going to be talking about not being the wallflower. We're going to talk about being the belle of the ball. But I also do want to cover a couple of things first real quick too. I am coming at this from the perspective of a career novelist. Now, I do want to clarify something as well that I feel I made a mistake in my last video. If you guys have seen that one, I was using the words professional and career kind of interchangeably, and I don't think that's actually a fair way to talk about writing and the writing journey. Because you can have a very professional quality product that you're very proud of and that you sell and that readers adore. You can have that. You can be a professional novelist without being a career novelist. Like, when you think about it, the fantasy authors we laud and love the most, like C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, they were not career novelists. They were Oxford Dons. They wrote professional quality work that obviously changed the nature of, fantasy and literature as we know it. But they weren't career novelists. So there is a difference there. And you, as you are exploring your publishing journey, you may end up deciding that being a career novelist is also not for you, and that some of the things I'm telling you tonight might even reinforce that for you, of like, the more she's telling me, the more I don't think I actually want to be a career novelist. I think professional, yes. Proud of my work, yes. Putting out work that my specific readers will enjoy, yes. But career, that's a different story. That's actually like supporting your family, livable income, the kind of consistency and the kind of like dependability that you need in order to actually like do this, as a career. So I want to just put that out there too, because I feel like some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight about visibility can come across as, dismissive of other ways of doing things, and that's not what I intend. However, based on my experience as a career novelist and as someone who has built a career over the last 2 years from 0 to 6 figures supporting my family, this is what I'm seeing. This is the difference. These are the things that you need to know in order to be that belle of the ball. So just wanted to get that out there real quick. So let me look at my notes here real quick. I've got a couple of notes in front of me here. So most of us are fairly familiar at this stage. You might not know this yet, but most of us are fairly familiar with how the Amazon algorithm works. So when you first publish a book on KU, you're going to have a space in all of the setup for publication where you can put keywords. And you want to put in keywords that are well targeted to your genre. So I'm going to assume that you're writing fantasy, romantic fantasy, YA fantasy, like something in my genre. And so your keywords are going to be things like YA fantasy, which is pretty broad. You could do princes and princesses. You can do royalty romance. You can do, like, there's a lot of different keywords you can do that will help Amazon know who to push your book to. Because Amazon wants to sell your book. They want to figure out who is going to buy your book and who they can get money from. So they actually are your friend as far as like selling your book. You just have to give them really good keywords, and you need to know which categories to put your book in. So the thing is, you have to, in those early stages, Amazon will push you. And they will put you out there, and they will say, you know, okay, well, this new book that's in this category, it has these keywords. Let's just kind of throw it out there. And they're going to wait and see who clicks. Now, what you want to be sure you're doing is that you're getting clicks immediately. Just those few clicks you're going to get, because when it starts, it's pretty small scale. But you want those first few clicks immediately to be the right clicks. You want it to be people who are buying other authors in your genre. So, for example, when I was starting out and I published my first book, I wanted to be certain that those first couple of clicks that I got were people who were reading Elise Kova and Alicia Klafiki and Jordan Rivet and a number of other authors that were in the lady-led YA fantasy genre. And the reason for this was, again, this is visibility. If just a few people start clicking on those, you know, I've targeted correctly. If just a few people start clicking who are in the right audience for me, I will start showing up in their also bots down on their product page, down underneath their books, and on their product page on Amazon. So this is no cost to me. I don't have to pay for this. This is a no cost for me positioning. It's basically getting me in the door at the ball. I'm still standing over on the edge. I'm definitely not the hostess. I'm definitely not, you know, the belle of the ball, but I'm in the door now. And so that's the first step, is just making certain that you're targeting the correct people in your keywords and putting the correct keywords in there. But this is where things get much more important. And this is where I'm going to talk about the three most important parts of visibility and generating visibility. You have to then attract that reader who's already searching for Elise Kova's book. You need to steal them. Basically, you need to attract them away. So, for instance, let's say that you wrote a fae romance, and it's like a stolen bride theme, otherworldly love interest, human heroine, and you know that your fae romance is a great fit for readers who love the Moonfire Bride. And I am already, as an established author, I am, you know, paying money. I've got my ad budget going out, and I'm already driving people to my Moonfire Bride page, my product page. They're already attracted to my cover. They're already attracted to my blurb. They're already interested in this premise. So you, brand new author, you're just showing up in my also bots. You know, they're scrolling down. They're still trying to decide if they want to buy the Moonfire Bride. They're scrolling down to check the reviews, and they're like, oh, some of these reviews are bad. Oh, but some of them are pretty good. I'm still trying to decide. And while they're scrolling around, they're going to see that also bought carousel right there. All of those different books. It's the bevy of ladies standing along the wall waiting for somebody to pick them to dance. You need to stand out to them. You need to look like what they're already interested in. They're already interested in the Moonfire Bride. So you need your book cover to look like that. It doesn't need to look exactly the same. If it looks exactly the same, then you're not standing out, but it needs to look like that. And then your title needs to look like that. Very, very similar. And then if you've got those things, you're going to get that Mr. Darcy's second glance. You know, Mr. Darcy's already there at the ball. He's kind of glancing past all the ladies, but whoa, wait a second. Second glance, he's coming back to you. You've got something that they're interested in because they're already interested in my product, and I'm already spending money to bring them here. So now you've hooked them. What else can you do to kind of bring them in a little closer? Maybe you could get them to come have a conversation with you. You undersell me. That's what you do. I'm selling my book at $4.99. You sell yours at $2.99. Then it's like, well, you know what? I might as well just, I'm already interested in this. I'm going to go click on that and have a look at it and see what it's like. So that's how you get that. You get that lingering look, and you're telling the Amazon algorithm that that you're interested in this kind of that reader is interested in your product. People who like Sylvia Mercedes will also like yours. And the more people you get clicking from my page over to your page, the more Amazon is going to go, ooh, okay, I know who likes these books. I know who's going to be interested in, I don't know, Hepzibah Bartholomew. I mean, whatever your name is, like I know who's going to be interested in Hepzibah's books because they like Sylvia's books. And they're going to start automatically putting you in all of Sylvia's also bots. They're going to start sending out emails to I mean, all of these different, readers who've already been buying my books. Hey, you liked Sylvia's books, you might like these as well. You're not paying a dime yet. You're increasing your visibility. And all you did in this instance was make certain that your cover looked like my cover. Not the same, but looked like it. Your title looked like my title. Not the same, but looked like it. This is targeted marketing. It increases your visibility like that. It's almost like a magic charm. Now here's the thing. People talk about these things all the time in all of the different indie publishing forums you're going to be in. People are constantly talking about make certain your covers are on brand, make sure your blurb is on brand, make sure your story is on brand. It's absolutely 100% true. Here's the thing. Most people don't actually follow through on it though. Most people get very fixated, and again, this is not to say that that's wrong. Most people get fixated, however, on an idea of what they want their book to look like, whether they've got a cover design that they themselves wanted to do, or they had a very specific fine art style that they wanted to see, or maybe they prefer beautiful text and lettering. Something like that. They've got an idea fixed in their head of what they want to see on their book. And here's the thing, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And if that is what you need in order to feel like you have got, a really beautiful product that is exactly what you wanted to produce, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But if you want to increase your visibility without spending any extra money, other than obviously on the cover design, but without having to spend money on ads and without having to spend money on Instagram tours or paid newsletter subscriptions or any of those things, the first thing that you need to do is go look and research all of the authors that you are trying to target, all of the authors that are exactly in your market, and then make certain your cover looks like that. And that could be very challenging too, because honestly, most of us, we're not artists. We are authors. We're here to write. So it's very hard to know exactly what it is, to pinpoint what it is that is making these cover designs sell. And I see a lot of people struggling with this, and I've struggled with this in the past myself. It's an ongoing learning process, but I will give you a couple of little hints. And honestly, the whole book cover design thing, that is an entire talk in and of itself, because learning how to get what you want from a book cover designer, knowing which book cover designers to query, which ones are actually going to get you what you want for the right price, and pushing until you get what you know is going to actually sell for you. It is a skill set in and of itself. It's not an author's skill set. It is a publisher's skill set. But if you want to be a career indie novelist, you have to start developing those publisher skill sets. And that's a whole topic in and of itself, which I might go ahead and do in another couple of weeks, because I've got a wealth of information and a lot of experience, both good and bad, in getting cover designs. But at this point, I know how to get what I want from a cover design, and I know how to get a cover design that is going to sell books to my genre and to my audience. I know how to do it. But the first thing that you need to do, honestly, is just go and look at the books that are selling, that are, reaching the audience that you want to reach. So again, if it's, romantic fantasy or YA romantic fantasy, go start looking at the hot sellers. Big thing to make note of, however, don't go looking at the traditional hot sellers. That is actually a very different market. They're going to have very different styles of covers. They're going to be beautiful. but they're going to be very, very different from the indie cover designs and the indie bestsellers. Here and there you'll see some crossover. By and large, the indie novelists, even the big name indie novelists that I have seen trying to put more traditional style cover designs on their launches, those books don't do as well. They just don't. I don't have an explanation for it, but it is a fact they are two different markets, readers who buy indie and readers who buy traditional. There is crossover, but you do need to know who you're targeting. And if you get too caught up trying to target those traditional authors, for one thing, you're going to find yourself competing against those traditional authors. And you can't. You don't have a major publishing house's, budget for advertising. Also, everyone is trying to compete with them. So just getting seen is really, really hard to do. And unless your cover design is like super top notch, you spent a lot of money getting something that is like really, really high end and truly can compete with what the trad authors are getting, it's just going to be a losing battle. So be sure you know the difference between what is accepted and normal and hot selling in the traditional market and the indie market, and be sure that you're leaning toward that indie market and those norms. Also be certain of things like, make sure your titles are at least similar in style to the things that are hot in the indie market right now. Be certain that your title is like, it gives you a very, very, very clear, like, this is the kind of book this is. That's why you see a lot of Courts of something and something. Immediately people know, oh, this is going to be a fey courtly intrigue romance thing, Court of something and something. That's what it's going to be. Like I have a number of books with bride in the title. The Moonfire Bride, Stolen Mage Bride, Bride of the Shadow King. I mean, they're not the most original titles out there, but they absolutely 100%, boom, they let readers know exactly what this is going to be. It's a marriage story, it's a bride story, it's a betrothal story, and that gets them clicking, it gets them lingering, it gets them triggering that algorithm in my favor so that Amazon knows, oh, all the other people who like bride stories, they're going to like this one, and they start spreading my visibility for me. So I can't honestly stress enough how important that cover design is for increasing your visibility. And if you are not currently getting the traction you want, that is the first thing to look at, because that is Mr. Darcy's second glance right there. You don't get any further into the ball if you don't get that second glance. You've got to have something that's really attractive and really on the market if you're wanting to increase your visibility. So anyway, I mean, like I said, I could talk about this for a long time. I mean, I've got oodles of examples. So again, I might do this at some point if you guys express interest. I might go ahead and do a talk just on cover designs, and I'm not as an artist, as an author, because it's really important. So, but that is your first one. Now, a lot of you, again, who've been around the block probably know what my next two points are going to be, but I'm going to go ahead and share them with you anyway, because here's the thing. Even if you've been in the indie field for a long time and you've heard all of this before, you haven't necessarily heard my perspective on it. And the interesting thing about my perspective is that I'm actually pretty new on the market. I only just started almost 3 years ago, which is relatively new. And I have applied these 3 techniques and they have worked. Now, when I launched back in 2019, it was a tough market. The word on the street was it's almost impossible to break out. It's almost impossible to get seen. It's almost impossible to build a fan base. It's almost impossible to build up to a 6-figure income and then stay there. It's hard. You think it's hard now? It was just as hard then. It might be a little harder now. I don't know, but like it was hard. The awesome thing though was that I took and applied these very specific strategies that I was seeing in all of the different forums. Do these 3 things and you will get visibility. I did them, and I did get that visibility. I was able to build that audience. I was able to actually build a career, and a thriving career, because I did them. So that's the thing that I'm bringing to the table to you this evening is recent experience of having done this and it working. So anyway, so like I said, you can probably guess my next 2 points for visibility based on what my first point was. You got to get the cover right. Next step, you got to get the blurb right. if you want to increase your visibility, what you need is to get people clicking on that cover and then coming and lingering on your product page. You want them staying there. You want them, clicking to see, have that little expanding to see your blurb because they're intrigued by that cover. They want to see what's this thing about. And you want them staying and lingering and looking at that. They're initiating conversation at the ball. And now you better have your witty repartee ready to go. So blurbs are a huge topic. There's all kinds of tips and tricks, and seriously, again, I will probably do another talk just on blurbs because I have learned so much about blurbs just in these last few years. But tonight I'm going to try to keep it fairly simple of what you need to be looking for in order to get a solid blurb that's going to do what you need it to do. So the point of a blurb is not to tell people what your story is about. The point of your blurb is to tell people why they're going to love your story without telling them, this is why you're going to love my story. So now there is room, in a lot of blurbs these days, you're going to see in italics or in bold right up at the top, there's going to be a little thing where people are saying, fans of Sarah J. Maas and Leigh Bardugo are loving this book because of these reasons. I do that myself on a number of my, at least book ones in my series. But that really only does you so much good. Your blurb is where it really counts, but your blurb is needing to do the same thing without being overt about it. Your blurb still needs to be telling people why they want to read it, not what they're going to read. They can read the book to learn that, but why they want to read it without it being obvious that that's what you're doing. So again, I could go on about blurbs forever, but tonight I want to focus just on one really key aspect of your blurb, because it is it's another instantaneous thing. It's like the cover. Either you're attracted to the cover or you're not. Boom. And then the next thing that you check is going to be the tagline up at the top of your blurb. And you're either attracted to that or you're not. And if you could attract that reader, then they might read the rest of your blurb. But that tagline up at the top, that is where you really, really need to nail it. So what I usually recommend in that instance is a 1 to 3 line approach. If you look at most of my blurbs, you will see a tagline that is, generally it's going to be 3 lines for me. And that is, introduce the heroine and what trope she represents. Introduce the hero and what trope he represents. Introduce the basic scenario, and that can be very broad scale. So to kind of talk you through how this has played out for me, my experience. So many of you know that when I launched my indie career, when I was building to launch my indie career, my goal was a career. My goal was 6 figures within 5 years, which obviously we crushed that goal. My goal was, I want to actually do this professionally. I want to get that visibility. I want to get that traction. I want to build that audience very, very quickly. So to do that, I knew I needed to write a very to market book. I needed to write a book that was going to be very appealing to readers of the YA fantasy genre. So, I did my research. I studied and I read both traditional and indie books. And when I was writing the Venetrix Chronicles, my debut series, I poured all of the tropes that I could into those 7 books, my 7-book epic YA romantic fantasy. I poured the tropes in. I definitely saw that the tropes that really kept people hooked were generally the romance tropes. That's where it's at. So I milked those romance tropes for as much as I could get, and really, really set up my book to be as successful as I could. Then got all 7 books done, got all 7 covers done. I got beautiful covers done for those books. Very on point for the market at that time. And sat down, I'm about to get the thing up on Amazon for pre-order, the very first book, and I sat down to write my blurb. And I went, oh snap, I am not anywhere near as to market as I thought I was. I tried to start telling in the blurb what my book 1 story was about, and realized I had almost no tropes to draw from. None of the big selling tropes. So the rule of thumb with your blurb is that you don't want to give away any more of the story than the first third of the story. So, like, you don't want to tell them what's going to go on, like, past the midpoint climax and all, because you're starting to give away plot twists at that point. So we're talking like first third. That's where you need to hook them. That's where you need to linger. And my first third of Bellatrix book 1 didn't have any romantic tropes. Period. Like, it's all still like world building and setup. And oh my gosh, I didn't know what in the world to do. So, I mean, I took a stab at writing a couple of blurbs and they were horrendous. I actually hired somebody. I hired a blurb writing service and I sent those poor people like a description of this is what the book is about. And I feel so bad for them. They tried so hard. They sent back something. I don't know whose book they were trying to write it for, but technically they covered all the things I sent them, but it was so mangled and it was so bad and definitely wasn't going to sell books. So thankfully, like my mother has been a award-winning novelist and a professional editor, and she was intimately familiar with the story. So she and I we tackled that blurb together. We took the one that I paid for and we ripped it apart and made it accurate. And we that was probably the hardest thing I wrote for that book, and I learned a lot of lessons. But if you look at the final result, if you look at the final tagline especially, you're still going to see what I'm talking about in that three-pronged approach for your little tagline blurb. My 3 lines are: a huntress with no past, a rival with a secret, a kingdom's fate hangs in the balance. So to start with, I've got my heroine. Now, you don't put names. As much as possible, don't put names, because especially fantasy names, people are like, I really don't care. I just don't care. But a huntress with no past, that immediately clues people into a number of things. A, she's probably going to be like a kick-butt leading lady. She's going to be like a weapons expert or something, because she's a huntress. Like, she's going to be a tough cookie heroine. A huntress with no past. Ooh, amnesia story. That's always kind of interesting. It's not the most romantic trope on the planet, but it's definitely an interesting trope. So, huntress with no past, okay, she's covered. A rival with a secret. Most people who read the genre are going to read that and immediately assume that he's going to be the boy and he's going to be the love interest, because he's a rival. So obviously they're going to fall in love, right? And the nice thing with that is that rivals to lovers is very, very similar to enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers is going to always sell better, but rivals to lovers is a nice close second. A rival with a secret implies mysterious rivals to lovers. So, he's mysterious. The crazy thing is, Turin does technically have a secret in the story. It doesn't really play that much into either that book, and it kind of plays out in the rest of the series, but it's not a major part of the series. So it's kind of an odd thing to include in the tagline, but I did it because it's true, it's accurate, I wasn't misleading anything, and it gave a clearer picture of the character, even if it's not it's accurate without necessarily being what you're going to expect it to be. So a rival with a secret is better than just a rival. He needs to have something. And I wanted to communicate mystery, so it just makes him more tropey. So that's what we ended up with. And then a kingdom's fate hangs in the balance. All of a sudden immediately, okay, well, it's a kingdom story. It's going to be an epic fantasy. So right there, three-pronged blurb lets people know these are the major tropes that you're going to find in this series, and if you're interested in those tropes, you're going to like this series. Then you get into the rest of the blurb and it's all like, shades, what are shades? And she hunts them and they're possessing spirits, and there's what in the world? And definitely not tropey. All of a sudden it's we're way out there in the speculative fiction world, and I was I thought I was writing to market. I kind of was, but it wasn't anywhere near as much as I thought I was. It still worked. That series did still, it worked in the long run, but it didn't work because of all of the unique things that I put in it. It worked because of the things that were familiar to people. It worked because of the things that made them go, oh, I liked so-and-so who wrote a story with an amnesiac heroine, or with a mysterious rival, or with whatever it was. I liked so-and-so's work, so maybe I'll give this gal a try. Also, I sold that book at 99 cents for a long time. That definitely helps as well. When you have no street cred yet, when they don't know who you are, they don't have any trust built up in you, they don't even know if you're going to finish publishing whatever series you've started, you really do have to break down any barriers of mistrust that they might already have for you. So like 99 cents, it's like, well, even if she doesn't finish, and even if I hate the book, whatever, it was just 99 cents. It's not that big of a deal. So, I mean, that is definitely like lowering your prices is not a bad way to go. Now, I do know a lot of authors who would very much argue that you should not be devaluing your work, and that we as authors, we deserve to be paid for our work. And you know what? That's 100% true. And especially by the time you get to a certain level in your career, I would absolutely urge, be very, very sparse in your 99-cent sales. But when you're starting out, you don't have a reputation yet. People don't know who you are yet. They don't know if you're gonna, like I said, they don't know if you're even gonna finish the series. So you want to like break down whatever barriers they might have toward giving you a try. This also might mean that you don't make a profit on your first book, your first 2 books. I did not make a profit until I didn't start making any sort of profit until I think book 5 or 6 of Venetrix. Like, it was all either loss or just, we were breaking even, and I was putting everything I earned right back into the series. Didn't start making any kind of a profit at first. That's okay. You're building trust, you're building reputation, and you're gaining visibility because you're teaching the algorithm on Amazon who is interested in your work, and they're starting to do all this background work for you that you're not having to pay for. So that's the second prong in my 3-pronged, like, this is what you need for successful visibility. So again, it's not going to be a big surprise to you what the third one is. The third one is the story itself. And obviously we're talking writing to market. Now, I know a lot of people, when they hear the term writing to market, they have alarm bells like going off in their heads of sell out, sell out, sell out. And I get that, because I did that too way back in the day, back when I was a traditional author and I was writing allegorical Christian fantasy that did not sell at all. And I was writing like very symbolic and very like dreamlike and very based on, like, heavily influenced by classic literature and classic poetry and like all of these symbols and all of that stuff. Like, I mean, and that was what I considered, that's real writing. It doesn't sound like anybody, and it didn't sound like really anybody else out there. It was like, I don't know, like maybe George MacDonald in places, but like it didn't sound like anybody else out there. And in my mind, that was real writing, and writing to market was sellout writing. That was people who just wrote to make a buck. I do not think that way anymore, because you know what? Yes, I'm writing what other people want to read. That doesn't mean I'm no longer writing what I want to read. 100% writing books that I love to read. Because the truth is, when I actually stepped back and looked at what I read for pleasure, yes, I read a lot of classic literature and poetry and stuff like that for pleasure too, but not for my like relaxing escapism pleasure. There's a difference, and when I started looking at what I actually turned to for fun and pleasure reading and relaxation, and the books that really would like catch me and like keep me coming back and keep me coming back to that author, like those weren't sellout authors. They were people who understood what people love. And then they wrote it, and then they wrote it again, and they kept consistently producing work that hit all of those notes that pleased me and that pleased other people. So anyway, all that to say, writing to market does not have to be an alarm bells moment for anybody. I mean, you know who else wrote to market? Shakespeare. Dickens. There's a lot of greats out there who were definitely like writers of the people. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about writing to market and how it is a powerful tool for gaining visibility. So when I started out, again, my experience writing to market it started with the Venetrix Chronicles, which, as I just laid out for you, was not actually as to market as I thought it was when I was writing it. This happens a lot, so don't get too discouraged. If you have written what you thought was a very to market book, and then you've published it, and you know you covered it well, and you know you've got a strong blurb, but it's still just not moving, and you kind of look at it again and you go, wow, I did not understand the market. I kind of missed the boat. It's fine. Most of us do. It's called a backlist, and it's okay to have a backlist. Learn from your mistakes. Look at why you don't think it sold as well as you wanted it to, and keep moving on. So for me, my experience, I wrote the Benetrix Chronicles and I thought super to market. Then as I was publishing it, I was realizing more and more what my market is honestly here for is the romance. They love the epic fantasy stuff. They love the world building. They love the magic. I mean, I take it back. They like the epic fantasy stuff. They like the world building. They like the magic. They like the shades. They like the unique elements. What they love is the love. What they love is the romance. And what is keeping them buying and continuing to read is trying to figure out when the heck Turin and Ilith are gonna frickin' kiss. Like, that is what is keeping them buying books. And once they finally do kiss, when the heck is she gonna let them kiss again? Which didn't happen for a while. Please don't hate me, guys. So again, I learned a lot more about my market after I'd finished that series and put it out. So my job at that point was not to despair and go, okay, I missed it. It's like, no, that's my backlist. Next project, going to be that much more to market. So I looked around and went, okay, well, like, what are some popular things going on within my genre? Well, Beauty and the Beast retellings. Like, those are, like, always popular. So I wrote a Beauty and the Beast retelling, my Scarred Mage of Roseward trilogy. It was a little bit more to market. I thought it was a lot a bit more to market. Like, when I was writing that one, I was like, yeah, this is the one, people. Like, this is going to be my big breakout. You know, Benetrix did fine. This is going to be the one. Turns out, Beauty and the Beast books are popular. Gothic romances with Noswraiths are a little bit too speculative and out there, and while enemies to lovers are always a big deal, Delta heroes, I learned, are actually not that big of a deal in the genre right now. I actually love a good Delta hero. If you ever want me to sing the praises of the Delta hero to you at some point, I will. I love a good Delta hero. I think he's great. It's not actually that popular in the market, so I learned very quickly, oh, again, I thought I was writing to market. It wasn't really as close as I thought it was. So again, got to go back to the drawing board. I want to keep pushing. I want to keep growing. I want to keep, like, expanding on you know, my knowledge of what it means to write to market. And almost by accident, I won't lie, almost by accident, I wrote The Moonfire Bride. So I wrote that one kind of as just like a break book. I had just had my second baby, my little boy, and I was just, you know, I was tired at that point, and I was just finishing publishing Benetrix, and I was gearing up to publish Scarred Mage, and I just wanted a break book. So I wrote The Moonfire Bride without really any, like, specific intention of where I was going to go with it. And at the time, it really wasn't to market. This was not actually a very well planned, like, ooh, this is to market sort of project. It was just something that I knew I would enjoy writing. And it was a little more romantic. It was a little simpler. It was my first time writing first person present tense, so that was just, it was fun, and it was just kind of a relaxing little project. So this is the interesting thing that happened. Oh, and I got the cover design for it too at the same time. Didn't really have a plan for when I was going to publish it, but I had pretty covers done for the duology. So right around the time that I was doing this, turns out Elise Kova, who is a goddess of the romantic fantasy genre, she went and wrote a little book called A Deal with the Elf King. Now, she also didn't have any particular intentions with this one. Like, she didn't think it was going to be a big hit. It was just a little fun extra thing that she wanted to write. She got it packaged up with a gorgeous cover, and she put it out there. And what happened is it absolutely exploded. Like, I have never seen a book so closely related to my genre, the romantic fantasy / fantasy romance, like a little bit more romantic, but not like not completely over into like super steamy territory, just a little bit steamy, but also not like the super sweet clean, like anything that was kind of within that genre. I'd never seen anything blow up like this. Like, it was huge. It's still huge. It's nearly 2 years old. Indie books don't have that kind of shelf life. This book was a phenomenal hit. So right after she published this book and it like blew up on the market, I got pregnant with my twins, and my husband and I started like discussing what we were gonna do, because I mean, with little babies on the way, it's like one of us is honestly not going to be able to keep working like this. Like, either he's going to need to quit, and at the time we're like, we're nowhere near that, or I'm going to need to take a couple steps back. and really just let my career kind of fade for a little while, get through the newborn and the baby and the toddler stages with twins, especially since my little boy is only 15 months older than the twins. I mean, it was a lot of babies, and it's like, I'm going to need to take a couple steps back. But what we decided while I was pregnant with them was, let's go ahead, since I'm watching Elisa's book blowing it up, and I knew that my book was similar. It had a stolen bride. It had an otherworldly love interest. It had a cover design that was actually really similar. It's not the same. Hers was a beautiful, like fine art illustration style, whereas mine was a much simpler photo manip style. But otherwise, if you look at them, they're actually very similar cover designs. You've got the hero kind of standing tall behind her, and he's very otherworldly looking. Hers was more overtly handsome, while mine was more eerie, but same kind of position. His arms around the heroine standing in the middle in a beautiful gown. Hers, it was a green gown. Mine, it's a beautiful pink gown. Both holding kind of a magical item in the center. Like she's got like some rose blooming, and my character has a candle. There's a lot of similarities. My color scheme was different from hers, and obviously the style of art was different from hers, but there were a ton of similarities. So I looked at that and I went, you know what? I'm going to just put this one out. I'm not going to wait and just save this as something to just put out after the twins are born. I want to go ahead and actually put this out and see if I can catch some of this market, because I have accidentally written to a market that I didn't know existed, but apparently is suddenly like ravenous. So that's what I did. A couple months after her book came out, I put out The Moonfire Bride. And all of a sudden, this is why this is important for visibility, people. That book, it didn't blow up like Elisa's, because again, Elisa's a goddess and I am a mere mortal. But all of a sudden, I went from making a nice little bit of extra income and building toward a 5-year plan to, wait a second, we could actually seriously rethink which of us stops working once the twins are here. And what's more, it might be a really bad idea for me to be the one to stop working once the twins are here, because all of a sudden my career has like jettisoned into an entirely different, strata. And if we slow down now, we can't like keep building on that. We're going to lose that momentum. So all of a sudden we had to stop and rethink it. And it wasn't because the book did as well as hers. It didn't have to. That's the thing. There's plenty of readers out there. Her book, and because I targeted her book and I knew how to get into the also bots, and I had written a book that was the right kind of appealing to the same audience, stolen bride, otherworldly love interest, human heroine, very, very different plot line, but otherwise very similar tropes, I was able to all of a sudden get so much more visibility than I had ever gotten before. What's more, I had 2 other series, in my backlist. I had both Venetrix and I had The Scarred Mage, neither of which were anywhere near as targeted, but which all of a sudden, like readers who loved the Moonfire Bride and Sunfire King duology, all of a sudden they could go exploring those backlist books if they liked my style enough. Like, okay, maybe there's no stolen brides in those, but I liked Sylvia's style. So let's check these out. So again, if you want to increase your visibility, writing to market is an incredibly powerful tool. It does not mean that every book you write has to be written with a very specific market in mind. I think it's a good idea to know who it is you actually want to buy your books. To me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you want to have a career to not know who you're trying to sell to. Like, you need to know who you're trying to sell to. But, it doesn't have to be perfect. And even the books that are just written purely for your own pleasure, they can sell better if you also have a book that's written to market. And it's a lot easier. On top of that, it's a heck of a lot easier to know what kind of things to put in your blurb and what kind of things to put on your cover. So all of a sudden, all 3 of them make sense in a way that they just didn't before. So that's my little pitch for writing to market. Again, I can talk about that, for ages. I have learned that much more about it. Moonfire Bride was an accident for me. Bride of the Shadow King was not an accident. Bride of the Shadow King is far and away my biggest seller. It leaves poor little Moonfire Bride in the dust. And it was very purposeful. It was very intentional. In fact, with Bride of the Shadow King, I wrote the blurb first. I did not write the story first and then try to write a blurb to go with it. I wrote the blurb first because I knew I knew how important that was toward actually selling this product, and how important it was to really nail down, these are the themes, these are the tropes, these are the things that are going to sell this book. Blurb first. Then I went and got the cover design, and then I wrote the book. I'm not kidding you, I did it in that order. Because now, like, having had the success with Moonfire Bride, having seen how well it did, but also seeing the ways in which it didn't do as well, because again, negative experience is just as valuable, if not more so, than positive. Because I was able to see both how well it did and the ways that it didn't perform, I was able to make much more clear-eyed, purposeful decisions for that book. And that book, which is now, like I said, outselling everything else I have. I mean, they say in the industry that it's like the 20%, 80% rule. It's like 20% of your labor is going to make 80% of your income. I mean, Bride of the Shadow King is probably pushing that more into the like 5% and 95% rule for me. I mean, it's just so much better of a seller than everything else. But I'm also, all of a sudden, now that the book has been out a month, I am seeing everything else selling so much better, including my much more way out there conceptual Prince of the Doomed City that's always been a hard sell and that I knew was going to be a hard sell. It's all of a sudden selling better. And it all comes back to what I was saying earlier. It's a matter of gaining reader trust. If you're trying to reach new readers, you're trying to extend your visibility, you're trying to get new eyes on your product, you have to get them to trust you. And if you come to a reader who loved, like, Elise Kova's A Deal with the Elf King, and you're like, here, read my book about warrior librarians and Noswraiths, you're gonna love it. They're gonna be like, no, I don't trust you, crazy lady. I really don't think this is for me. And they're gonna move on to somebody who actually knows how to target them. If you say, hey, you liked this one, why don't you check out my book about, another otherworldly king who needs a human bride for whatever the reason is, and also has a gorgeous, very romantic cover. And, I targeted different tropes, but I targeted similar different tropes that I also was seeing hot in other places. And that gives people more trust. It gives them more confidence. And they look at that and they go, oh, I really might like that. And then they read it and they discover they do like it, and they like my voice, and they like how I tell a story. Now they're that much more willing to go back and look at my more crazy out there backlist and go, I might actually really enjoy these. Like, I wouldn't have thought to pick these up, but like, I might like warrior librarians and Noswraiths. That actually might be kind of cool. That's how it grows your visibility. Writing to market grows your visibility. Now, this is the degree. I want to share with you the degree to which Bride of the Shadow King, again, which was my purposeful book, is so much more successful than anything else I've done. So with the Moonfire Bride, I put about $500 worth of advertising into the pre-order for that book. So before the book was published, I put about $500 worth of preliminary advertising. And with that degree of effort and that degree of financial push, I was able to get approximately, I think it was 200 pre-orders on that book, and that felt pretty good for a book one, still a relatively new name. That felt pretty good. It's like, that'll give me a nice launch for that book. And it was pretty good. Again, that book, like, it pushed me into a whole new strata as far as my career is concerned. It did do well for me. It was a good move. This is the contrast between accidentally writing mostly to market and purposefully writing to market. Bride of the Shadow King, I put 0 ad budget into the pre-order for that book. 0. 500 for Moonfire, nothing for Bride of the Shadow King. I had 200 pre-orders for Moonfire Bride. I had 750 for Bride of the Shadow King without spending any money for on visibility. Didn't spend anything, and I was selling it at a higher price. 200, 700. It was that big of a difference, and the reason was trust. People saw that cover, they read the blurb, they trusted that they were gonna like it. So even if they'd never heard of me before, they went ahead and pre-ordered because they believed, yeah, that's going to be exactly for me. That's going to suit me to a T. I could never in a million years dream of anything like that for any of the other books that I've put out, because none of them were that degree of targeted. I knew that I was going to be able to sell Bride of the Shadow King. I knew what it was going to do for my family. I've told you guys before in the last video that I actually switched gears and took a break from Doom City in order to write Bride of the Shadow King, because I wanted to financially provide for my family, give us a little bit more of a cushion. I knew what it was going to do. I had that confidence going in. But that confidence has been built up over the last couple of years of trial and error, of trying to write to market and not quite succeeding, figuring out where I went wrong, trying again, not quite succeeding, but figuring out where I went wrong, like constantly trying. Built my big old backlist, so I've got tons of things for people to go through, learned my lessons, put it out there. So anyway, those are my 3 top main tips for increasing your visibility. They really work. I know they sound really basic. I know that you're going to hear this from basically everyone else out there, but they really work. They can work for you too. The thing is that you have to actually do them. And by actually do them, I mean do them correctly, and that can be easier said than done. And believe me, you have all my sympathy, because I have done it wrong as many times as I've done it right. But most of the time I've done it mostly right. That's the big thing. So you get as close to the mark as you can, and then you continue improving. So I'm going to just very quickly, because it's not super late yet, I'm right at about an hour here, but I'm going to very, very, very quickly just touch on one more tip of visibility, just one more. I'm not going to do both of them, but I'm going to touch on one more tip of visibility that I think will be really interesting to all of you. So once you've got those 3 things done, the next visibility tip that I would share with you is networking with other authors. So obviously when you're starting out, you don't have a market yet. You don't have an audience yet, or maybe you have started out, but again, you haven't gotten any traction yet. You've only got a very, very tiny audience, and you want to grow your audience. So networking with other authors who have already grown curated audiences of people that know they love their stuff, that is incredibly valuable. You need to be able to do that. But it can be a challenge to do, because it can feel like, oh, there's some sort of like club where the elite all hang out together, and how do I actually, again, there's the ball, and the princess is at the ball, and she's got all her duchesses and her ladies and her countesses, and they're all at the ball, and here I am, I'm the baker's daughter. How do I get an invite to the ball? And yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. It's actually a serious question. So this is what I did, and this is what I recommend that you do. If you're the baker's daughter trying to get an invite to the ball, don't start out by going up to the princess and saying, hey, I'd really like an invite to the ball. She'd be like, yeah, I bet you would. And then she's going to go about her business. No, what you do instead is you say, hey, princess, I have these beautiful cupcakes that I think would be great for your ball. You offer something. So this is how this analogy works. When I started out, I didn't have an audience. I didn't have any books to share. I didn't have anything. When I started out as Sylvia Mercedes, as an entity, it wasn't as an author. I started out as a reader. My SylviaMercedesBooks.com website, which I'm now using as my author website, was originally a reader website. I kept a blog there in which I read and reviewed indie authors in my genre. Most months I would pick an author of the month, and I would read through their most popular series or their most recent series, and I would review their books, and I would share those reviews on Goodreads with hyperlinks to bring them back to my website. I would have big old giveaways at the end of the month for paperback copies of those books, and then people, if they wanted to enter the giveaway, had to subscribe to my newsletter. So I was starting to build my author newsletter at that point. Like, this was a good 2 years before my first Sylvia Mercedes book came out. This is the work that I was doing behind the scenes. So so I would, the other thing that I would do when I had an author of the month set up, I would go and contact that author, and I would let her know, hey, you're my featured author of the month. I'm reviewing this series of yours. I'm doing a big giveaway. No cost to you, not asking anything of you, but hey, would you be interested in coming and doing an interview over on my blog for my readers? And by and large, the vast majority of them were like, yeah, thanks. That's really nice. You know, it's literally, it's free advertising. All of us, no matter where we're at in our careers, we're excited about free advertising. I mean, again, visibility is a thing. It doesn't matter what stage of your career you're in. We're all very excited about free advertising. So any of them that had some time were like, sure, I'll come and do an interview. Why not? And some of them had to graciously decline, but that was also fine. And I would generally like kind of shoulder tap. I wouldn't shoulder tap the big names. Like I wasn't trying to shoulder tap Miranda Honfleur. I wasn't trying to shoulder tap Elise Kova. But like Alicia Klafiki was just getting started at this time. So I shoulder tapped her. And Claire Sager, I believe, was one that I was shoulder tapping. Like she was just getting started around this time. She had a series out, so I shoulder tapped her. Helen Schuer was like, I mean, she was blowing it up at that time. She had her first series, and it was like incredible. So like I very tentatively shoulder tapped her because I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if Helen will actually talk to me. Turns out she did talk to me, and she's a totally lovely person. And she's, you know, we're friends now. Hi, Helen, if you're here. But yeah, like she's one that I reached out to. And so I started out by giving. I started out by offering something. I started out by showing them that I am not somebody who's going to be like, me, 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 me. I'm going to be, hey, let me help you. Let me offer what I have. I don't have a lot. Let me help you. And then once I, you know, progressed a little bit further in my career, I had a newsletter freebie out and was trying to really like grow my newsletter. I didn't have my first book out yet, but I was like on the verge. It was a couple months before the first book launched, just working on growing my newsletter. Then I had all of these people that I'd already had at least some form of contact with that I could ask to start sharing my newsletter book. Like, hey, I'm on the verge of launching. Would you be willing to do this? And some of them did, some of them didn't, but the vast majority of them did. This is the great thing about the indie author community that I did not find in the traditional community back when I was a trad author. The indie author community tends to have a really good view of, we're not going to run out of readers. Also, I can't write enough books personally to satisfy all of the readers out there. Like, I just can't do it. And honestly, if I have brought a reader over to my product page through my advertising and they get lured away by your book, that's honestly fine. Like if you've undersold me and your cover works and they go and they buy your book instead, I don't personally mind all that much because I know they're going to read your book in a day or two and then they're going to want the next thing. They're going to come back to me eventually. So like, I don't find it to be a particularly competitive market. Like, I mean, it's competitive. Like, I mean, it's hard to get yourself, you know, established and to like build that loyal following, and you need to work your tail off to be sure that you are like bringing your readers what they want. But as far as like interpersonal relationships are concerned, I found the indie author community to be one of the best professional communities out there. Like they are generally very happy to help, very happy to give, very happy to nurture, you know, very, very happy to support new talent. There's the exceptions to every rule, but the vast majority of them that I've interacted with, they were great. But, and this is a very big but that you need to pay attention to, indie authors are still extremely busy people. So if you hit them up to support you and to feature you and to like share you in their newsletter, and they go check out your work and it does not look like professional work, they probably aren't even going to respond to you. Like, I mean, the truth is, like, I mean, maybe they will, but like, I don't respond to, oh, hi, sweetie. My handsome just brought me a cup of tea with a dragon on it. I don't actually respond to most of the requests I get from people asking me to feature their work. And it's not because I'm, you know, I mean, I am honestly too swamped to answer, but if I see professional quality work, I will always answer, because I want to support people who are taking this seriously. But if the kind of work that you're coming to me with is obviously just like, you wrote a story, you had fun writing it, you put a fun cover on it because you enjoyed putting a fun cover on it, that's fine. Like, there's no shame in that. Like, I certainly would not look down on you for that, but you're not actually looking to be a professional or career author in that case. It's your hobby, it's something you're doing for fun, and your book is much more about, like, you know, it's for your family and friends, it's for posterity. I don't know what it's for, but it's not for my readers. My readers trust me to point them to professionals. They trust me to point them to things that they might truly love. And if I don't get a good vibe from the work that you bring to me to feature in my newsletter or to promote on my Facebook page or whatever it is, if I don't see professional level work there, I'm not going to respond to you. So case in point, an interesting case in point, just this last weekend, I actually got a request from a new author. So this is definitely a take notes. This is how to do it. And it also proves everything that I just said earlier in this talk. So I got an email in my inbox last weekend from an Elizabeth Trafalgar. And I have no idea who Elizabeth Trafalgar is, but her name is Elizabeth Trafalgar. Whatever she has to say to me, I need to know. Gosh, I wish that was my name. I don't know if it's her pen name or if it's her real name, but whatever it is, what a great name, Elizabeth Trafalgar. So anyway, her subject line was YA fantasy author blurb. So I kind of knew what I was getting into when I opened it. And I opened it up, and she started her letter really, really well. She started it with... I've read these books by you, and I'm a big fan, and I appreciate these things about these books. So what she came to me, she still brought me something. She still gave me something with the opening of her email. She gave me respect. So, she's not offering me a newsletter feature or anything like that because she doesn't have that yet, but that's okay. She's still coming to me with something. She's still offering me respect and admiration. So right there, she's putting me in a very good place of like, okay, this is not just somebody going, me, I wrote a book, please read it. That's not what she's doing. She's like, here's my respect. From there, she went, reading these books inspired me to rethink my own aspirations as an author and led me to continue to, work on my own book, which I now have published. So it's a nice little here's the respect, and now I'm leading into the meat of the email and what I'm actually writing to you for. And that's all good. That's actually very well done. And here's a link to my book. That was also really important. She sent me a link, so I know there is an actual book there on the other end. This isn't some speculative book that she wants to write someday but hasn't yet. This is a real thing. So here's a link to my book, and at the end she said, would you be interested in receiving a free ARC in exchange for an author blurb for a review? So I'm just going to put this out there right now. I don't do author blurbs unless you fit into a very specific niche of people who are people I love and also already know and admire your work. So if you are Alicia Klafiki, yes, I'll give you an author blurb because I love Alicia and I know and love and respect her work. Emma Hamm, Sarah Wilson, Claire Sager, you know who you are. If I love you and I've read your work and loved your work, you get a blurb from me. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get a blurb from me. And that's no disrespect for you. It really is just a matter of time. I just don't have time to read all the requests I get. So, it's just the way it is. But anyway, so she wasn't going to get that from me, but she intrigued me enough that I wanted to go and check out her book. So I clicked the link and I went and checked out her book on Amazon. And the first thing that I saw was that she had done her research for her cover design. She had a very polished looking cover design. Now, I immediately saw that she had tailored it more toward traditional cover design standards, not indie, which it honestly might end up harming her in the long run for reasons I've already stated, but it was still a very polished quality. You could tell that she had done research. She had found, I don't know if she did it herself or if she found an artist, but she had definitely done her research and, gotten a really polished looking cover. So that right there, I'm like, okay, this is somebody who's taking this seriously. She wants to do this for real. So then I went and checked out her blurb, and it was a really good blurb. It definitely gave me a sense of all the tropes that I would hope to see. I would say she probably spent too much time on kingdom names and people names and some of the specifics that I kind of tend to glaze over those, but it was a good blurb. And then I went and checked her look inside. And immediately, 1 sentence in, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. She knows her stuff. This is a good writer. She hooked me right away. Had to read on to the end of the scene. Very, very intrigued. So I wrote her back and said, sorry, I don't do blurbs, but I am going to feature you in my newsletter in May. So right there, networking. Shows you how this shows you how visibility can expand, can happen for you, because she had done her work. She had done her homework. She had a good cover, good blurb, great opening scene. she is now going to have the opportunity to be seen by my curated, targeted audience of 10,000 plus newsletter subscribers, people that already love my genre and what I write, romantic fantasy, lots of fae stuff, all of that stuff. She's now going to have an opportunity to be featured directly to those people. Doesn't cost her a dime, so no ad budget. An opportunity to try to attract and interest those people. She's now invited to the ball. So she still has, it's still going to be a challenge for her. It's not the same challenge as being on Amazon and competing with everything on Amazon. But for instance, in my newsletter, I always feature 3 to 4 other books by other authors. Some of them very established names, some of them newbies. It depends on the book. So she will still have to compete for attention. She's still going to be there listed with 3 or 4 other titles. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not her book gets the clicks. Usually there's a winner book. When I go and check the stats and see which book got clicked on the most, there's usually a winner book that got way more clicks than the others. Just this last newsletter, I had it was really interesting. I had 4 books that I featured. One of them is by an established author, and it was a 99-cent deal with a stunning cover. So I knew that one was going to win all the clicks, and it did. But there were 2 other authors that were very, very similar, both in their themes and in the level of quality in their cover design, and then in their own where they are in their careers, how established they are, how many books they have out, how big of an audience I would guess they have. So they were very, very similar. And one had a tagline, because I always feature the cover, tagline, and then a little, it's 99 cents, go get it now, or it's $2.99, go get it, or whatever. But cover and tagline is what I feature. So I did that. I lined up these 2 books. They're right next to each other in my newsletter, and very similar covers, very similar brand, very similar theme, 2 different taglines. One gal, her tagline featured the heroine and said something about the heroine, in Brianna's new ice cold world, the coldest thing by far is the eyes of her betrothed. It was something like that. So it immediately clued us in. Brianna's traveling to a new world, a new realm, a new kingdom to meet her icy-eyed betrothed. That's pretty intriguing. The other tagline, it was not a bad tagline, but it was focused on the magical fairy forest in which you will, discover dangerous fae princes and things like that. It was much more like fairy tale and otherworldly, and just a little bit more, omniscient, if that makes sense. Otherwise, they look like comparably good books, but easily the icy-eyed betrothal one far and away outstripped. Otherwise they were both good covers, and I would guess both very talented writers. Icy-eyed betrothal blurb, boom, that's the one everybody snapped up. So keep this in mind, people. I'm not kidding you. You want to make sure you nail all 3. Great cover, great blurb, and then be sure that your first chapter is your first line, and your first chapter needs to be on point. So if you're going to go and you're going to knock on my door and ask to come to my ball, you need to prove to me that you've got the ball gown and that you've got the witty repartee and your fanning techniques. You know what I mean? It's you got to have all 3 of these things set up, or you're not ready for the ball. And it's honestly okay if maybe some people aren't really meant to go to the ball, and that's okay. You don't have to even want to go to the ball. Balls aren't for everybody. But if you do, be sure that you're prepared, because you don't want to show up to the ball Cinderella just finished doing the family's laundry. She needs her ball gown before she can really be Cinderella. So anyway, that's all the main stuff I was going to cover tonight. It's already been well over an hour. The last thing I was going to cover was, you feel a little manipulated, Victoria? That's funny. Yes, I know. It's true, though. It works. So the last thing I was going to cover, I was going to talk a little bit about advertising, but honestly, I don't even want to get into that right now. Advertising is honestly not my area of expertise. I do a lot of advertising, and I spend a lot of money on advertising, but it involves numbers, and numbers are not my thing. So I really don't want to get into that tonight. And honestly, the big thing is, you don't even want to start throwing money into advertising until you're certain you've got those other 3 things down. And then I would also recommend start doing newsletter swaps, start networking and getting newsletter swaps with other authors. And if you see on the days when they send out a newsletter that your sales clicked up a little bit, then you've hit a sweet spot. You got all three down pat. You've got it. You're ready for this. Then you can start throwing some money into advertising. But other than that, yeah, I really wouldn't. I don't really want to talk about advertising. So real quick, I will take a couple of questions at the end here. If you guys have any that you want to ask pertaining to this topic or anything else pertaining to indie publishing, I'll stick around a few more minutes and take some questions. But real quick, I'm going to present to you, I have a couple more topic ideas for more of these live chats, and I want to see what you guys are most interested in. So let me know in the comments, and whichever one gets the most interest will be my next topic. So I'm considering doing 3 different talks, one on blurbs and how to write effective blurbs, one on cover design and how to get the right kinds of covers for your genre, because again, both of those are topics that can be expanded on. The other talk that I thought maybe some of you might find interesting is basically a walkthrough of my publication of Daughter of Shades, my very first indie published book, because there was a whole process there, and there were years worth of work that went on behind the scenes before I hit publish, and then there was, you know, the immediate follow-up over the weeks and couple of months after the book came out. So it is a whole journey just publishing that one book, and that was my first book that launched this career. And I thought that might be an interesting topic of, you know, like how I did that, which things I did right, which things I feel I did wrong, which things I would do again, which things I feel like whatever, they didn't really do much for me. So if that's a topic you guys would be interested in, I will walk you through that as well. So anyway, those are my 3 options. So drop in the comments what you would like, and now I'm going to have a look at these questions. So Stephanie has a question. She said, how do you know what a market is doing at any given time? Do you look at how many review stars an Amazon listing has, or something else? That is a fantastic question, Stephanie, and I'm so glad you asked, because you know, it's one of those things that, like, a lot of us who've been in the business for a while, we already automatically know to look for these things, and we forget that not everyone knows this. So I really appreciate you asking. I actually had made a note in my notes that I never once looked at to mention this, and obviously forgot. So if you want to know how well a book is selling, what you want to do is go to its Amazon product page, and I am going to pull up a product page right now. For Bride of the Shadow King. You want to go to its product page on Amazon, and then you want to scroll down. Up at the top, it's going to be, you know, the cover, the blurb, the buttons for, you know, click now and buy, and all of that. You scroll down a little bit, you're going to see some ads, you're going to see series information. Scroll it down a little bit more, and you're going to come to a section that says product details, and then that's going to be listing like the publisher name, the ISBN, all of that stuff. Right down almost at the very, very end of it, it is going to list bestsellers rank. So that number there, so for instance, right now, Bride of the Shadow King is number 212 in the entire Kindle store. That is my sellers rank right now. The smaller the number is, the better the book is selling. So, like, for instance, one of my other books is... hold on one second. I'm going to pick Prince of the Doom City, because this will give you an idea of how much better Bride of the Shadow King does. So Prince of the Doom City right now is number 10,091 in the store. That's actually not a bad number. I'm actually happy to see that it's doing that well. Number 10,091 in the store for a book that came out in September. That's not a bad rank. But by contrast, Bride of the Shadow King is number 212 right now. Those are very, very different numbers. So that rank is going to tell you how well the books are doing. So when you're looking at different books in your targeted genre, that's what you want to scroll down to. Particularly be sure that you're noticing when the book came out and then correlating that with the rank. Because if you see a book that is like 50,000, rank 50,000, but it came out in like 2015, 50,000 is a really great rank for a book that came out in 2015. That means it's kind of holding steady and still selling a decent number of copies, even, you know, 7 years later. Like that's a really good rank. When you see something like Elise Cove as a deal with the Elf King, which is still in the top 1,000 nearly 2 years later, that's almost miraculous. Like, that book, it does so extremely well. So you're usually going to see the highest ranks around the first 3 months of when a book releases. So right now, Bride of the Shadow King is the best that I have ever had, in that it's been out for a month and it's been in the top 3 to 200 range like this entire time. I have not yet with this book broken the top 100. I was kind of hoping I would. Doesn't look like it's going to happen at this point, but I'm hoping that when I launch book 2, I might actually break the top 100 with book 2 or book 3. Those are some of my stretch goals for this series. So yeah, anyway, that's what you check to know how something is going. Anna's asking tips for finding keyword ideas. That's a really good question. There are tips and tricks for doing it. You can look at, I think it's called Kindle Rocket, is a program you can download that's supposed to help you download, help you find and accumulate keywords, but I'm not an expert on Kindle Rocket, so I really can't help you that much with it. I think I even have it and I never ever use it. When I am generating keywords for my Amazon ads, I literally just fill it up entirely with author names and book titles. That's what I do. I mean, I'll accumulate 1,000 author names and 1,000 book titles, and those are my keywords. I mean, it's you can throw in some other keywords like fantasy romance, enemies to lovers, royalty. There's other keywords that you can throw in there, but for me, what I usually do is just author names and titles. And if you're talking specifically for those, those 8 keywords that you have to plug in when you're putting a book up for pre-order, it's in your publishing information, I think I still put author names and book titles a lot of the time, or I'll put categories. I'm not an expert on this though, Anna. I succeed for a lot of other reasons than knowing keywords, I'm afraid. There are other people who are way better to ask about that. And it's honestly, I think it's one of those things that the vast majority of us who've been in this a while, we all kind of pretend we know what's going on with keywords, but nobody really knows. But if you still really have your other 3 things lined up and in order, you're going to be okay. Let's see if we have any other questions here. Oops, sorry. I know it's not much fun to watch me trying to scroll through here. So I'm still working through writing Far From Publishing, so I'm just absorbing all the topics. That's great. All of them sound great, but I don't have a preference. That's fine. Does anybody have any other questions for the evening? If so, speak now or forever hold your peace. Obviously, this is just such a big world, and there are so many things to cover, and I know it can be very, very daunting, but let me leave you just with this little bit of encouragement. Again, it was very daunting when I started out too, and like I said, word on the street was it was harder than ever. Most of the podcasts I was listening to, most of the forums I was in, it could get very, very discouraging sometimes. But these tricks, these techniques that I'm talking about tonight, they work. They do work. They worked for me. They can work for you. If this is the field that you want to get into, you just have to do the work. And I say just have to, I mean, it's hard work, and it's trial and error. But if you do it, it can work for you. There are no guarantees, obviously, but there were no guarantees for me either. And I did make it work. Now, I also, when I say I made it work, I haven't made it work and now I have a 20-year career behind me. I'm at the beginning of it. So I have to keep doing this and keep learning and keep refining and keep making it. But I reached that first goal of 6-figure income within 2 years, and my goal was 5. So it's I was able to do it. I believe you can too. If you really want it, you really go after it, and you do the work. A couple of resources that I recommend, the Chris Fox Write Faster, Write Smarter series. Definitely recommend that one. He wrote The 6-Figure Novelist and 5,000 Words an Hour, and there's a number, Right to Market, number of books in that series that I found very useful. If you have the money for it, I highly recommend getting yourself signed up for the Mark Dawson Self-Publishing Formula web courses. You can just look up selfpublishingformula.com, and the website will lead you to all the courses that you can purchase on advertising and all kinds of great information. I think he's got one that's just Self-Publishing 101. It'll have all the information that you need to get yourself started. So I definitely recommend it. So yeah, anyway, that's all I have for this evening. Oh, hold on a second. So Jill is asking, this is personal, understand if you don't want to answer. How many books did it take you to reach six figures? For me, it was 10, it was 11. It was 11 books. So 7 books in the Venatrix series, 3 books in the Scarred Mage trilogy, and then the Moonfire Bride. Well, I guess I take it back. It's 12 books. Moonfire Bride, Sunfire King, those were the books that pushed me up to that realm. That being said, I also did have other books come out during that time, during that year, that contributed to reaching six figures comfortably. But it was really books 11 and 12 that did it for me. So like, have patience. And honestly, 11 and 12 was still pretty early for reaching six figures. So if you hit 11, 12 and you're still not there, don't get discouraged. It's just simply a matter of like, I happened to accidentally write something to market at the perfect time. Elise had just broken out big time and I had something I could follow up with. So if it takes a little longer for you, like, don't get too discouraged, but it is doable. But that's actually a really good question. Anyway, so I think that's all for the evening. I don't see any other questions coming in, but I hope you enjoyed this topic. I know I was a little bit more low-key this evening because honestly, I'm just very tired at the end of the week with this agony book that I've been writing. Hopefully next time I'll be a little bit more peppy. I will look through your votes on what you want for the next topic. I'm planning to do another one. Probably not next week, but maybe the week after. I want to start trying to do these every other week as long as I have time and energy, but we will see because I have 4 very small children, so we will see. But anyway, thank you so much for being here, you guys. It's always great to talk to you. Thanks for your great questions. And Megan, who asked the original question on visibility, I really hope this was helpful for you too. And I'm excited to see what all of you end up doing with your writing careers. Have a great evening. I am off to drink some tea. Bye.